When we want to start learning, the best thing we can do is to check popular apps and try to implement their components. But wait, what does it mean? For example, when you are checking Instagram, try to implement Instagram's bottom navigation bar with Flutter. To implement a simple bottom navigation bar, the first thing we have to do is to convert our class from stateless to stateful. Then we put a scaffold in the build method. In the scaffold, we have a parameter called bottom navigation bar in which we can set the bottom navigation bar method. Now here we have to set a list of items which are actually tabs with their icons. Before doing this, we have to add our icons to the project. First we create a folder called assets, then inside it we create another folder called vectors and we put the icons in this folder and then we define the vectors folder in pubspec. The format of the icons we want to use is SVG. To use SVG we must add the Flutter SVG package to the project like this. And finally, to apply changes in the project just press Ctrl+S in pubspec. Now we need to define our tabs. To do this we use items property, which is a list of bottom navigation bar item. Therefore, we need to use bottom navigation bar item to define the item. The first item that we need to define is the home item. In the bottom navigation bar item, we have a property called icon, which is a widget type. And we can define SVG picture widget from the Flutter SVG package and pass the icon path to it. We add the rest of the items in the same way. The last item is the profile picture, which is in a circular box. To implement this, we can use container and define the image and its decoration property using image and also set the box shape of the container to circle. Also set the height and width of the container to 30. I put the profile picture and images inside the assets folder and also define the images folder in pubspec. Now if we run the app we will get this error. The reason for this error is that each item must have a label, or so to speak a title. Because our items do not have a label, we leave them as an empty text. Now if you look carefully, you will see that the distance between the items is different and not fixed. To solve this problem it is enough to set the type property value to fixed. Also we can't move between items now. In order to be able to move, we first define an int variable called selectedIndex and set its default value to item number 0. Now when we want to switch between items, we have to change the selectedIndex value. For this we can use the onTap method and use setState to change the selectedIndex value to the number of the item we clicked on. And finally we must set the value of the current index property equal to the selectedIndex variable. In order to be able to show the specific content when an item is clicked we need to define a list of widgets, which is actually the same list of pages. Since we don't have a page in this project we define a list of containers with different colors. Now we just need to define this list in the body and pass the selectedIndex to it. Also when the item is clicked we have to fill the icon. For this we have defined two types of icons in the project. Bold and outline, and it is enough to check in each item that if the selectedIndex is equal to the item number, the filled icon will be displayed, otherwise the outline icon. And finally, if you pay attention, the icons are located higher. In order to place them in the center of the bottom navigation, we must set the value of the two properties show selected labels and show unselected labels equal to false. This is Flutter Basics from the Flutter Guys YouTube channel. In this part, we will learn about the stepper widget in Flutter. A stepper widget displays progress through a sequence of steps. Stepper is generally used in filling forms online. The first step is to define a list of step widgets, so I will define a list called step_list. Now we have to define the steps in this list. The step widget has a parameter called title in which we must set the title of the step. We have three steps. The first step is the account, the second step is address, and the last step is confirmation. Now we need to set stepper widget inside scaffold and body property. Stepper has a required parameter called steps and we must pass it a list of step widget, which we pass the list we created above. This is a basic stepper and we need to customize it. First, in order to have a horizontal stepper, we must set its value to horizontal in the type property. To change the shadow value under the stepper, we can change the value of the elevation property. I want to disable it, so I set its value to 0. The next step is to implement the content of the steps. For this, we must use the content property in the step widget. In the account step, I want to create two simple text fields named email and password. Therefore, I use the column widget and two text field widgets. Now we should be able to go to the next step when we click on the continue button. But the continue button is not active. In order to activate it, we must use the onStepContinue method. Now we have to define the conditions for going to the next step in this method. First, we must determine which step is the current step. For this we define a variable called currentStep, which initial value is 0. 0 means the first step is the account step. Now we have to set this variable in the currentStep property in the stepper widget. When we click on the continue button, we need to change the value of the current step to go to the next step. To do this, we check if the value of the current step is less than the length of steps -1. Change the value of the current step using setState and increase it. Length of steps -1 means that we do not have more than 3 steps and we cannot go to the next step in the third step. Now if we click on continue, we will see that we go to the next step. But the problem is that it is not clear which step we are at. To solve this problem, we need to use the isActive property in the step widget. In the first step, we determine that if the value of the current step is greater than 0, the value of isActive will be true. We can also use the state property to improve it. In the first step, I check if the value of the current step is smaller than 0, then it is in editing state, otherwise it is in complete state. In the other steps, we apply exactly these changes. In the address step, I put two text fields named address and pin code. Then I check in the isActive property. If the value of the current step is greater than 1, its value will be set to true. And in the state property, if the value of the current step is less than 1, then it is in editing mode and otherwise it is in complete state. In the confirm step, I don't put a special widget, but I check the isActive value. This time if the value of the current step is greater than 2, it will be true. Also, since it is the last step, I set the value of state equal to complete. And to go back to the previous step, when we click on the cancel button, we must use the onStepCancel method. In this method, we check if the value of current step is greater than 0, change and decrease its value using setState. The reason I set the condition greater than 0 is that you cannot go back to the previous step in the first step. Date Picker is one of the most used widgets in mobile applications and also in web apps too. In this video, we are going to create a simple working example of how to create a date picker and get the date. We first need to have a text field. When clicking a text field, the Date Picker dialog is open where we choose the date. So first we create a text field in the center, then we set the label using decoration and label property. We also set the filled value to true, and we set the calendar icon and the prefix icon. Then we set the border side in enabled border to none, and also set the border color in focused border to blue. And finally, we set the read-only value to true so that the user cannot edit the text. Now when the user clicks on the text field, we need to show the Date Picker dialog. For this, we first create a future method called selectDate. To display the Date Picker, we must use the showDatePicker method. Now here we have to set an initial date first, which we can set to the current date using datetime.now. Then we have to set a first date, which I set to the year 2000. And finally we have to set a last date, which I set to the year 2010. Now using the onTap method in the text field, we can call the selectDate method. Now, if we click on the text field, we will see that the Date Picker will be displayed. Now in order to be able to show the date we choose in the text field, we must first define a controller for the text field and then set the controller. If we click on OK, we save this date inside of this new date field. And this return date time is nullable, which means if you click OK, a date time is returned. And if you click on cancel button, then the null value is returned. Now it is enough to check if the date is selected and the picked value is not null. We will put the date value in the text controller using setState. Now, if we restart the app and test, we will see that what we expected is happening. A bottom sheet is an alternative to a menu or a dialog. It opens from bottom to top and can be dismissed by swiping it from top to bottom. You can use the bottom sheet when you want to perform a small action without creating a separate screen. To create a bottom sheet, the first thing we need to do is to define a future method named displayBottomSheet. Flutter has a function called showModalBottomSheet, which is a future method. Because of this, we make displayBottomSheet a future method. This method has two required parameters, context and builder. For context, we define a build context in the method as a parameter. And in the builder, we can return a widget that returns a container with a height of 200. Now if we call the method when we click on the open button, we will see that a simple bottom sheet is displayed. We can use the properties of method to customize the bottom sheet. For example, we can use shape to round the corners of the bottom sheet and use rounded rectangle border to round the upper corners. Or we can change the color of the bottom sheet using background color. We can also change the color of the barrier and reduce its opacity like this. And if we want the user to be unable to dismiss the bottom sheet, it is enough to set the value of the isDismissible property to false. And now you can see that we cannot close the bottom sheet. And finally, as you can see, the content of the bottom sheet is in the builder method. For example, I am now showing a text in the child container. We all might have come to a point in our mobile developer journey to either pick some images or videos from the device gallery or camera. Image Picker plugin helps us do exactly that. In this part, we are going to show you how to pick a single image from gallery and camera and display it in the Flutter app. To implement the Image Picker, we need to use the Image Picker package. So the first thing we need to do is to add the package to the pubspec. Once the package is installed, we would need to make some changes to our iOS and Android config files. According to the package document, we don't need to apply special settings for Android. But for iOS, we need to add these keys in info.plist. If you run the app and come across this error, to fix it, just update the distribution URL and Gradle wrapper to this URL and also update the Gradle version and build.gradle to this version. I put two buttons on the page, Pick Image from Gallery and Pick Image from Camera. When we click on the first button, we will select a photo from the gallery, and when we click on the second button, we will take a photo with the camera. Let's define a future method named Pick Image from Gallery. Now it's time to use the Image Picker package to select a photo from the gallery. For this we need to use the Pick Image method in the Image Picker class. The Pick Image method has a parameter called source, which we have to specify the source of photo selection, which we set as gallery. When the photo is selected, this method returns an X file that we must use to display the photo, so I saved the return value in a variable called returnedImage. Now we have to display the photo we selected. For this we first define a global file variable called selectedImage. Then we check if it is not null. We display it using the image.file widget. Otherwise we display please select an image text. Now we have to go back to the Pick Image from Gallery method. Here when the image is selected, we have to set it in the selected image and use setState to change the value of the selected image and update the page. For testing, we must call this method, so when we click on the button, we can call it. As you can see, the phone gallery opens and we can select an image. Now if we select an image, we will see that image is displayed. Let me show you something. Now if we stop in the gallery and do not select an image, we will see this error. The reason for this error is that we did not select an image and we set the null value in the selected image. To handle this, we put a condition before setState that if the returned image value is equal to null, don't go to the next line. To select the image from the camera, we must execute the exact same method. But instead of using gallery in the source property, we must use camera. So I copy the same method and change its name to Pick Image from Camera and also change the source to camera, and then call this method. Animations give a better experience to the user. I know, and you might be knowing that Flutter has great support for animations with ease of use. But wait, not in the case of dialogues. Flutter's dialogues have some simple and predefined animations. The first thing we have to do is to create a method called OpenAnimatedDialog. To create an animated dialog, we must use the showGeneralDialog method. So here we return the showGeneralDialog method. In this method, we have two required parameters, namely context and page builder. We set a build context for the context parameter, and we do not need to return anything in the page builder, and we only return a container. In the transition builder property, we must return the dialog, so we return alert dialog. In the alert dialog, set the title and content, and also set the radius. If we test now, we will not see any animation. The first animation we need to add is scale transition. Now, if we test again, we will see the transition animation. We can also add a fade transition animation like this. And finally, we can set the duration for the transition builder, which makes the animations look better. In this section, we are going to see how we can display images in Flutter. To display an image in Flutter, first we need to create a new folder inside the root of the Flutter project and name it Assets. We can also give it any other name if you want. Next, inside this folder, add one image manually. Now we need to define assets folder in PubSpec like this so that we can use images. There are several ways to display the image. The first method, we can use image.assets. Now here we need pass the image's path like this. We can also change the size of the image by setting the width and height. We can use image.network and pass the URL to display the image through URL and internet. If you pay attention, the height and width of the image are the same and now it should be displayed as a square. To solve this problem, we should use the fit property and set its value to fill or cover. When we display an image, it simply pops onto the screen as they are loaded. It does not assume useful between the users. To overcome this issue, the image uses a fade in image widget that shows a placeholder image while the target image is loading, then fades in the new image when it loads. For example, I use the image in assets for the placeholder, and we can see that the placeholder image is displayed before the image is loaded from the internet. We can use container to custom display. In container decoration, we have a property called image and its value is equal to decoration image. Now we can use asset image or network image in image decoration. Now we can set height and width again. By using the border property in the container, we can set the border as red, or we can set the radius using the border radius property. And we can also display it as a circle by setting the value of the shape property equal to circle. The dismissible widget is an essential component when building lists in a Flutter app. This widget enables users to dismiss items from a list by swiping them horizontally. A typical use case for the Flutter dismissible is in email or chat applications, where users can quickly swipe away messages or emails they don't need. We will make a basic list view where the item can be dismissed. The first step is to define the list items, so I define a list of string called items with test values. The next step is to create a list view builder in the body. Now here, first I set the item count value equal to the item's length that we defined above. Also using padding, I create space from the top and bottom vertically. In the item builder, we must return the dismissible widget. This widget has two required parameters named key and child. Without keys, the default behavior is to sync widgets based on their index in the list, which means the item after the dismissed item would be synced with the state of the dismissed item. Using keys causes the widgets to sync according to their keys and avoids this pitfall. Therefore, we can set its value using value key like this. Also, I put container in the child argument and set items text in the center. Dismissible has an argument called background that is stacked behind the child. If secondary background is also specified, then this widget only appears when the child has been dragged down or to the right. For example, I set a red container with delete text in the background and a blue container with save text in the secondary background. The dismissible widget has a method called confirmDismiss. In this method, we can specify what to do when it is dragged to the left or right. For example, we define a condition that if it is dragged to the right, a dialog will be displayed. Otherwise, if it is dragged to the left, this dialog will be displayed. Now if we click on yes, the item will disappear. And finally, when the item is dismissed, we must remove that item from the list we defined above. For this, we can use the onDismissed method. In this method, we can determine what to do when it is dragged to the left or right, because we want to remove from the list in any case, so we do not define a condition and remove from the list like this. The mobile applications that use material designs have two primary options for navigation. These are namely the tabs and the drawers. A drawer is used to provide access to different destinations and functionalities provided in your application. Inside the scaffold, we have to add the drawer property and assign the drawer widget. Then inside the drawer widget, we add the list view as a child widget. Now if we click on this menu icon, we will see an empty navigation drawer. First of all, we implement the drawer header. To do this, we create a separate method called buildHeader. This function returns a drawer header widget. By using box decoration and image property, we can set the background image for the header, or we can set solid color by using color property. In order to show user information, we are using column widget. For display user profile image, we can use circle avatar widget. We need to use background image property to display user profile image, and we can pass to it asset image or any image provider widget. Also, by using radius property, we can change size of avatar. And we can simply use the text widget to display the user's name. Now we add the menu items by using list tile widget. Each item is created in a similar way, so for clean coding, we create a method called buildItem with icon and title and onTap parameters, which we use onTap to navigate to another page or any other action. Now we can use this function and add more menu items. And now for example, if we click on notification item, we will navigate to notification page. In Flutter, a drop-down allows users to select a single item from multiple options. It shows the currently selected item and opens up a list of options when you tap on it. To make a drop-down button, the first thing we have to do is define a string variable called drop-down value and set its initial value to 1. Then we define a list of strings called items and set the items in the list. Now in the body, first we define a container with a width of 150 and a height of 80, and also set the color and border radius in the box decoration. Now in the center of the container, we must use the drop-down button widget. Here we have two required parameters named items and unchanged. In items, we have to put a list of drop-down menu item. We can use the values of the list that we defined at the beginning. We do this by using map like this. And in the onChanged method, we have to update the value of the drop-down value to the chosen by the user using setState. Now if we test, we will see that the value selected by the user is not displayed. To display the value, it is enough to set the drop-down value variable in the value property. To customize, we can set the border radius or we can change the arrow icon. We can also change the icon size and text style. To remove the underline, we can set a container widget for the underline property. If your application needs to display some contents, it's quite common to separate the contents into multiple tabs. In Flutter, creating such a layout can be done easily using tab bar and tab bar view widgets. Basically, in order to create a tab layout in Flutter, we need to implement the following steps. Create a tab controller, create a tab bar, and create a tab bar view. To make the tab layout work, we need to synchronize the selected tab with its contents, which is the job of the tab controller. We can create a tab controller manually. or use an available widget, known as Default Tab Controller, which supports some common features. Here we have to set the number of tabs we want in the length property. We also put a scaffold in child. We can place the tabs at the bottom of the app bar. For this we use the app bar property in the scaffold and create an app bar. I change the background color of the app bar and also set the title. To set the tabs, we use the bottom property in the app bar. Now here we are using the tab bar widget. In this widget we have a property called tabs that a list of tabs should be set. The length of our tabs is equal to 3, so we set 3 tabs. Now in the body, we must use the tab bar view widget to display the content of the tabs. Tab bar view has a property called children that we need to set the list of widgets. We can set any widget here. For example, I set 3 text in the center of the screen. If we have many tabs, we can set the isScrollable property to true, and tabs scroll horizontally. For example, I increase the number of tabs from 3 to 6 and then set the isScrollable property to true, and now we can see that the tabs scroll horizontally. And finally, tab bar has various properties that you can easily use and customize the tabs. Time Picker is a UI component that controls or lets the selection of time. This can be used in the applications such as alarm, stopwatch, or in any other scenario where time selection is required. So let's coding. Here we need first import the material.dart package. We have the timeOfDay class, which is representing a time during the day. First, we define a timeOfDay class object with the hours and minutes, or we can use timeOfDay.now to create a time based on the current time. This sets the hour and the minute to be the current time. We use this to display the time on the screen. We also need a button that when pressed select time function gets triggered and pop up a time picker. Then inside select time method, we have used the show time picker function, which will show a material designed time picker on the screen for the user to select time. Now we have to set initial time, which we set to a timeOfDay object. We can use time that defined above. This initial time will be displayed when the time picker is open. Now we can select an hour in the minutes. Also by click on keyboard icon here we can enter any time we want. And if we enter an invalid time, a warning will be displayed. If we click on OK, we save this time inside of this new time field. And this return timeOfDay is nullable, which means if you click on OK, the timeOfDay object will be returned. And if you click on cancel, the null value will be returned. Therefore, if we click on the cancel button, the time we display to the user will not change and the initial time will be displayed. And if we click on the OK button, we put this new time object inside of the time object that we have defined. And the time selected by the user is displayed. Finally, if we select hour under 10 and also the minutes under 10, and then if I click on the OK, we see that the time is displayed incorrectly. To fix this, we need add to hours and minutes a 0 in front. As a result, we have a 0 in front of hours and minutes in case the value is below 10. And make sure hit the subscribe button to get next video.